Okay, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. Where do you hear about the guests I have on today and the amount of winning this guy has done? But before I say his name, just kind of gonna give you a little list of things that he's accomplished. He's a co-athletic director at East Kentwood High School in Michigan. He is the head track and field coach since 1998, and this is just mind blowing. He's won eight, I think that if this is accurate, eight state championships, going for number nine this year. One national championship, but this is really great. His graduation rate of his student athletes is 100%. He specializes coaching the pole vault, and he's consistently pumped a bunch of athletes out year after year who compete at the collegiate level. But this is great. We're going to get deep into this. He is now an author of the book called Beyond the Finish Line, which is a phenomenal story, the art of a transformational coaching. Welcome to the show, David Emeott.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here. I'm fired up to chop it up with you a little bit today.
Yeah, well, I have a ton of questions to ask you, Dave. So before I do that, just do me a quick favor. Just tell the audience just a little bit about yourself, and we'll kind of roll from there.
Well, this is like you had said. I'm here at East Kentwood High School, the largest high school in the state of Michigan. Our school is very diverse high school. We probably have 80 to 90 languages spoken in the hallway in any given year. I was graduate of Central Michigan University. Started coaching when I was in college. Started coaching high school kids when I was in college, and just fired up about changing lives really is what it comes down to. I like just spending time, with kids and watching them change, watching them grow and get smarter and get stronger and get faster, and see what they do with their lives.
Eight state championships,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
We
And
were on quite a run really from 2000 and 7 through 2019. So in those 13 years, we had won 8 state titles, 3 runner-ups. So 11 of those years, we got a trophy at the state finals,
yeah.
in the largest division in a pretty good track and field state, which is Michigan. And then in 2010, we won the New Balance National Championship, and we were the number one team in the country by really any measure. Nike had named us the number one team in the country. New Balance had awarded us the
Yeah.
trophy because we won their meet down there. We really had a heck of a run, and kind of it's all in that book. But COVID had an impact on everybody's lives,
Yeah.
and so in 20 we probably were going to win again. We had the best hurdler, the best thrower, and the best jumper in the state of Michigan, and another cast that was going to be one of our really great teams. And instead of going that way on the third day of practice, I was actually on my way to New York City that day. I was in Ohio, staying in a hotel, and that Thursday I was on my way, and my first I got a message from New York, the Armory, saying we're going to shut down and you should go home. And I got a call from my superintendent and said, Dave, you probably got this is the only day you got, and we're going to shut down tomorrow and at least until spring break. And obviously, the rest is history. But
Yeah.
drove all the way back home to spend one more day of practice with my kids. And then we kind of lost our way a little bit, and so it's been a fun climb back up, and really writing this book has been so cathartic and moving this thing back in the right direction.
Yeah. So let me like, how does a high school team, how do they decide who's the national champion? Is that just based on points? Is it a competition? Is it meets? How does that work?
Well, a different way. So in 2010, New Balance had a meet down in Greensboro, which was a nationals meet, and so it's like the ones you see now that are, Franklin Field or out Hayward Field. But we actually all competed and we got points just like a regular state final. So if you won an event, you got 10 points, 8, 6, 4, 3, 2,
Yeah.
1, or whatever the scoring system was. So really, the top 8 placers scored points at that meet. So we were competing against the best of the best. Western Branch was a really good team at the time, and we just we scored I think 29 points or something in that scenario, which when you have the best people in the entire country, it's not easy to do. There's a lot,
Yeah.
you get 10 points to win an event, and we were fortunate enough to win an event, but we really nickeled and dimed ourselves through everything else. We scored, I think, in 6 or 7 other events,
Wow.
meaning we had all Americans in
Yeah.
6 or 7 other events. And so it was fun. We had a good time, that's for sure.
So I'm going to guess you win a national championship that the following season you have a lot more kids coming out for the team.
Have a lot more kids, but you also have a lot. Our team's huge, first of
Yeah.
all. So we made a commitment early on when I first started coaching, that we were going to go after basically 10% of the school. That was our goal. And so if there are 1,500 boys in our school, we want 150 boys on the team. So when I first took it over, we had 56 boys on the team, and track and field, just like anything, is a numbers game. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm just out gathering bodies.
Yeah.
I like talented kids, but I really just want, bodies.
Yeah.
Big, tall, short, fat, whatever, whatever it is, I want them. And so uh we generally have over 150.
A lot of kids.
It's a lot of kids, but you win a national title, it wasn't nearly as hard to get to 150 the next year, right?
Yeah.
They were coming out of the woodwork. People wanted to be a part of it, and we were traveling. That year, Nike flew us out to Eugene, Oregon in 2010 because we were the number one team in the country. Our state had rules; we could only take our seniors, but when Nike flew us out there, they flew us out first class all the way
Wow.
out to Eugene, Oregon. I had kids who didn't have a driver's license. I had kids who not, and so they were so,
They
their
must have
first
loved
time
that.
ever being on a plane was
Yeah.
was flying first class. So yeah, we got very popular in the school. I mean, in general, any class that you're in our school, there's 3 or 4 kids are on the track team, and so the word travels pretty quickly when
Yeah.
you have success.
That's awesome. So, when people are hearing that, they're listening to us talk and you talk about the successes, they must be saying, boy, this guy must have had the perfect life. Let's bounce around a little bit. Let's go
Yeah,
backwards in time
yeah,
and
yeah.
and let's talk about you growing up, your teenage years, you got into college. I know you had a little rough patch there, which you talk about in your book, right?
Okay.
Can we talk about that? Because I think that's where a lot of great coaches they come from is like tough upbringings.
Yeah, I don't know about me and great in the same sentence, but I oftentimes say greatness comes from trauma,
Mm,
right? There's find people who are great at things. It doesn't take you long to figure out what's driving you. What's that thing that makes you a little different? What's that thing that makes you special, right? So I grew up in a tough, I tell the kids all the time, I grew up in a really tough world, tough, mean world, and I worked really hard to be as nice as I am right now. And so yeah, I didn't, we didn't have much growing up. I really was raised in one low income housing, but either an apartment or a trailer park or whatever, one after another. You'd go to one and you'd get kicked out and you'd go to
yeah,
another. And all the while I had a stepdad at home who, while there were some times when he wasn't a terrible guy, there was a lot of times when he was, an alcoholic and abusive and a lot of those things. And so what you grew up doing was figuring out how not to be here, right? And school got you away from. I never missed school. I say to the kids all the time, your best ability is availability, right? I was always available. I was at school every day, perfect attendance because I didn't want to be home. And and then what was after school? Oh, you could join this team and that team. And so even, my senior year of high school, I was on the golf team, the cross country team, the hockey team, and the track team. And I was just trying to how much time can I spend away from home, and that stuff was positive. Those parts were positive. But the reality is there were the not so positive stuff that was going on, also trying to stay away from home, and you get yourself in a lot of trouble, and ended up sitting in a jail cell at 17 years old, wondering where my life was going.
yeah. Was that just like the moment in time where like it was a wake up call for you, or did you change right away, or did it take a while?
Well, I think guys that are of a certain age remember a show called Scared Straight
Oh
on
yeah. Oh,
MTV. And so So when that judge put me away for 30 days in the local
Ooh,
jail, right? And you're 17 years old in a jail cell with, a molester and a murderer and a some thieves and all of these, different guys. That's a scared straight kind of moment, right?
yeah,
You're wondering what went wrong in your life that you ended up here, right? And where did you take that turn? And either you're gonna continue on this path or you're not. And so it was certainly a wake up call. And I'm not saying the day that I walked out of that jail, I was a saved man and I was, on my path to greatness. But I certainly took a lot of steps forward and I had made some commitments to myself as to the kind of person I was going to be moving forward.
yeah,
And so that really, I spent a lot of time when I was young being upset about the judge or the prosecutor or my own court appointed attorney, the other guys that were involved in all of these crimes and all of this stuff. But when you matured, when I got to a point where I really started to think about it, I wouldn't trade that for anything. I wouldn't trade that time I spent there for anything because I don't know what if they didn't catch me at that moment, I was going to get caught doing something, and who
yeah,
knows how that would have ended.
yeah,
So it was the greatest thing that probably ever happened to a young, idiot kid who thought he knew everything,
yeah. So what was going through your, I mean, 30 days in jail. What
Yeah.
was going through your mind that night after? That's a long, it's not like
Uh,
it's 2 days. 30 days is
Yeah,
a long
30
time.
days. Like I have an 18-year-old kid at home right now, right? I
Yeah.
can't imagine him spending 24 hours in that place. So
Yeah.
I think of a young, person that I was at 17. You're crying yourself to sleep every night, but you're spending every day trying to be something and somebody you're not, right? You're just trying to survive the moment. And it's not, and it's county jail is not the yard
Yeah.
that you see on television, but you're with some pretty rough people, right? You're not and those guys, was is incredible that those guys were mostly older guys who had, like the one guy's on trial for murder, uh but they looked at me as a young kid who kind of still had a lot of life to live, and
Yeah.
it was interesting the moments that I spent with those guys talking about, hey man, this isn't it. You're not even an adult. You're
Yeah.
17
Yeah.
years old. You couldn't even go to war right now if you
Yeah.
wanted to.
Yeah.
So what, you can save this, you can turn this around. All you have to do is kind of change the scenery a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You gotta look around and go, how is this all going to change? And so, spend a lot of time asking questions, right? What would you do if you were me? What would, a lot of that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
you're asking this of people who, their lives didn't turn out so well, right?
Yeah.
But I'm forever thankful for those guys. Played a lot of spades during the day, a lot of, got some commissary, my
Yeah.
got I was able to get work release, so I would go to work and
Okay.
I would go to the gas station where I worked at a couple days. I was a young kid. I didn't work, all 40 hours, but I would go a couple days and it's kind of just like the movies. You bring back cigarettes and you're everybody's best friend. So it
Yeah.
was,
So how did people look at you when you got out? Was it they look at you differently? Did they talk to you differently?
yeah, well, the first thing I did when I got out, it was I think within a day or two, I was in college. I started college at Saginaw Valley State, and I had an ankle bracelet on. I had a monitoring bracelet on because it was a month in jail, and then it was 2 months under house arrest, essentially. But you could go away to work or
Yeah.
school. And the only reason I was going to college is so I could run track and field, so I could continue. I didn't know what my life was going to be, that's the only reason I had signed up. They said I could join the team, and I was like, good enough. That's fine. I didn't look anywhere else. I was actually a really good math student. Had a perfect score on my math ACTs. But other than that, I really wasn't. I wasn't much of a reader. I was
Yeah.
couldn't write real well. I needed college as much as college. But way more than college needed me. But yeah, it was. You're on the track team. you can't, you're not wearing sweatpants, right?
Yeah.
You're in Michigan in August or September. It's hot, you're running around with this ankle bracelet on. And yeah, and I kind of, when I look back, I really took those. It was like paying my penance, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like shame or what, like on the no, Game of Thrones, like shame, shame.
Yeah.
Like every time one of those moments would happen where somebody'd ask me or they would notice or somebody would make a joke, I would just say, "Yeah, that's what you deserve. This is what you deserve right now. You're getting what you deserved, and uh, and that's okay. And this
Yeah.
is the penance you're going to have to pay." uh Internalize it, and you can't be the guy you used to be, and the guy you
Yeah.
used to be would have fought those people or would have done or would
Yep.
have quit or whatever. And it was all, I don't know if I ever took the right path on anything. It seems like it's turned out pretty well for me,
Yeah.
but really it was just about, this is, you're lying, you're stealing, you're cheating, and you can't do that anymore. And
Yeah.
if you're not going to change your life, I was joking with some people the other day. They were asking me about that line in the book, the lying and the stealing and the cheating, and I said, I'm not. There's a lot of people who don't like me very much because I don't lie, because I'm a pretty honest, straightforward guy, and I don't mind telling you what I think. But there's a lot of people who appreciate that about me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
My kids, if like when you go to the movie theater and it's 12 and under is this and over 12, whatever. And we went with some relatives one time, and they were like, "Oh, just say you're 12." And I was like, "No, we do not do that. We're not getting the kids meal. We're not, like
Yeah.
this is where it
That's great.
starts, right? Every little
Yeah.
seed
Yep.
of telling your kids it's okay to be liars, right? So um but yeah, it's things have worked out. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough for sure.
Yeah.
I really have never told that story before the book came out to any of my athletes. I never really
Yeah.
told my friends that. I didn't tell my family, my children. I had to sit them down, at the when I was deciding to put it in the book or not, to ask them if it was okay. And
Yeah.
my oldest is 24. I have a 22-year-old daughter, and I have an 18-year-old son. Um, are you guys okay? First of all, I got to tell you this story about your dad, who he was when he was 16, 17 years old. And then secondly, I'm thinking about putting this in a book, and everybody's going to know that your dad was a criminal.
Was that the first time they heard it?
Yeah, yeah.
Whoa. How'd
I'd
they
never
handle
told
that?
them. Well, my wife was the only person who really knew publicly. And when I talked with my publisher, Streamline Publishing, shout out to them, they do an amazing job. Um, I wrote an A version, a B version, and a C version. An A version was just like whitewashed. I was born in this world. I grew up. And I became a coach. And the B version was, I got in a little bit of trouble, but and then the C version is what's in the book. And they said, it's really not much of a book if you don't have a purpose and if you don't have a
Yeah.
reason why, and why you've poured yourself into all these kids for all these years. And
Right.
why being transformational is so important to you, right? Because who was, transformational for you, and now you got to do that for others, type thing. So
So how did your kids at that stage of their lives looking at you as the perfect dad, the coach, the
yeah,
champion, the leader, all of a sudden, hey,
yeah,
guess what? I got to tell you something. How did
yeah.
they handle that?
It was it was one of those kitchen table,
Yeah.
kind of nights that families have sometimes, and they they were first. It was
Did they
kind of.
think you were joking, like you're kidding them
Well,
for a
yeah,
crowd?
that's what I was going to say. It was first and foremost, they were just like um, nervous laughter almost, right? They
Yeah.
were like, "Oh, is this what? Are you
Yeah.
kidding?" And they're kind of giggling, and they're like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, let me tell you, this, grandma, right? Where and I've told you all these stories about where they knew, like where I grew up, and I took them to some of the trailer park where I grew up, or the low income housing where I lived, and I say, I just lived this rough life, and I wasn't alone. There's a lot of friends and a lot of people who kind of live these same lives with
Yeah.
me, and you know, there's a reason why I'm crazy about, we don't lie, we don't steal, we don't cheat, like all of these things. And here's the reason. And so, yeah, it was an interesting conversation, to say the least.
Was it an emotional one or
Yeah, for me it was. I don't think
yeah.
for them. I think for them, they were.
in shock.
Like yeah, probably shocked, but also they just love their dad, I think,
Yeah.
right? And they just care about me as a person,
Well, they
and they
probably
were,
look at you as more of a superhero now, somebody who was able to overcome something,
yeah, yeah. Well,
right?
and that's the thing. They knew how embarrassed I was to tell. I think more so, I'm embarrassed to tell the story about myself, and they're listening to it, and they're there to support me,
Yeah.
right? And so maybe I probably could have told it a little different way. I couldn't have told it, maybe I could have told it a different way to maybe not put it all on myself so much, but I
Yeah.
think I was really just internalizing, like, I got to break this news
Yeah.
to the people that I'm the biggest fan of in the world, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they're probably my fan, but I'm a fan of theirs. And
Yeah.
so it yeah, it was an interesting night, to say the
Yeah.
least. But they
Yeah.
were gracious, they were great. And I said, this means, like, you're going to have friends that are going to ask you questions about your dad, and you're going to,
Yeah.
and my one son was still in high school, and I said, well, there's going to be people at the high school
Yeah.
who are going to have things to say, and you, and
How did you feel once it was out? And like, was it a relief?
don't know. There's part of me that was a relief for
Yeah.
sure. There's a part of me that's uncomfortable with it a little bit, just because I hadn't told the story for 30 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's 35 years ago,
Yeah.
next year. So there, I hadn't told the story, right? I hadn't really shared it. And so then one of the first couple times that I had to tell the story, I had to remember almost, there's parts of it that come back to me like it was yesterday. There's parts of me that I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know why it ended up like that. Or what, like people would be like, well, why'd you end up in jail for so long? Or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. I probably didn't have a very good lawyer, and things like that. So I didn't. I had a court appointed guy who, just met him that day, and he was like, yeah, that sounds good, Judge. Let's get on
Yeah.
to the next guy. So
Yeah. So who was the influential person in your life once you got out and you started to get on the straight and narrow? Anybody
yeah,
specific?
yeah. What's interesting is I had a really great high school track coach. His name was
Okay.
Doug Frank, and he really taught a lot of lessons. And even though I committed all of these crimes and got into these issues while I was on his team, I was influenced by him, and I was incredibly. It's a weird situation. I was probably the person I felt the worst for was him, because here I am, one of his athletes that he respected and cared about. He was my math teacher. I became a math teacher. He went to Central Michigan. I went to Central Michigan. He was a track coach. I was a track coach. Like, I
Yeah.
wanted to be this guy, right? And so um, he was a guy that maybe his lessons just, it wasn't my time, but they kind of came to me later. And then I got into college. I had a really good college track coach for a couple of years at Saginaw who did a great job. Jim Nesbitt was a good guy. But really, like I stated in the book, the person who probably changed my life the most was my wife. When I met her, she wasn't like anybody else I had dated. She wasn't like the girls that were from my hometown. She went to a Lutheran school and had a great, her family was all put together, and her parents still, loved each other, and all of these things. And
Yeah.
and it really, in my brain, I was like, that's the life I want. How do I get there? And really, she changed my life as much as anybody. And she'll
Yeah.
laugh when I say that, but it's true. I would have done anything to glean her respect.
Yeah.
And somehow she still liked me. I have no idea. I still, to this day, she's never really articulated that one to anybody, but somehow she saw something in me that is probably what people see in me now.
Yeah.
But that guy wasn't there 35 years ago.
So what was it like? This I wasn't even thinking about asking you this question, but I'm going to ask you. What was it like walking into her to meet her parents for the first time? How was that?
Well, here was the thing. I hadn't told anybody the story, and I really didn't think anybody knew the story. I had told her some of the story, but there was an odd connection between her family. Her sister was like a guidance counselor for my little brother, so it was a weird deal. They weren't we weren't in the same town, but it just kind of worked out
Yeah.
that way. So the sister knew the story and then told the parents, and then the parents. So it was an odd situation because who would want this guy dating their daughter? Like if
Yeah.
this guy showed up to date my daughter, I would probably, this guy would be okay. The guy 35 years ago,
Yeah.
so it was, they weren't easy to please. And really, I really respected them for that. It was
Yeah.
one of those things where I was like, yeah, you guys have everything together. You shouldn't want your daughter dating this
Yeah.
guy, right? And so it took a long time to kind of win them over. And they were kind. They showed grace and they weren't awful to me, but it wasn't like, oh, we welcome you with open arms because
Yeah.
who wants that kid dating their daughter, right?
Yeah. What'd you look like back then? Did you have long, straggly hair? Or you were a mess or what?
No, I looked a lot like I look now, just better looking, younger, less wrinkles. I was always a short hair guy because I worked at a gas station. I had a mentor. This guy's name was Ron Gobine, and I always, the book Rich Dad Poor
Yeah.
Dad.
Yeah.
Uh, Ron Gobine was like my rich dad. He
Okay.
was my best friend's dad. I spent a lot of time at their house, and he owned a gas station, and I pumped gas for 8 years. And so there was no long hair, there was no facial hair, there was no.
Well,
He
that
would
was
have
his
thought
rule.
we were the Yankees,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like you can't, you got to look respectful. We're out pumping gas for the wealthy people of our area who are paying extra, and so no, I always looked like a good kid. I just made a lot of bad choices and it
Yeah.
probably hurt me, as much as it helped me back then because,
Right.
they didn't suspect that I was doing, awful things.
Yeah. So how did your struggles growing up, the tough things you went through, how did that transition or how does that affect how you coach and lead today? Does anything spin into that?
Oh, yeah, of course. I just see myself in these kids so often, and I can find myself where they're at, right? If they don't, maybe the home life isn't great, or maybe they don't have a dad. I never knew my real dad, and so I sit in front of my kids. My two this year we're gonna have 200, and I have 220 kids signed up for the team right now. Um, and I always told my stories about not having a dad, or I always told my stories about my dad, my stepdad being an alcoholic and abusive, and it made me vulnerable, I think, to my kids. And some of them don't have any of those problems. Some of them have a
Yeah.
great home life, and their mom and dad love them, and they cut the crust off of their bread. But
Yeah.
other struggles that they have, they say, they can come in and sit down with coach and know that I'm not going to judge you based on what's not
Yeah.
going well in your life. And when you want to be transformational, uh, being vulnerable is a big part of that, right?
Yeah.
Being somebody that they can talk to and really lean on sometimes. And so there's been many times where kids have come in and you think their world is great, and they go, well, my parents are going through a divorce, and well, but you live in that giant house over there, and you live on the golf course, and you got all this and
Yeah.
this. Yeah, things just aren't great at home, and and
Yeah.
and they're willing to share because they know my life wasn't that great, and so a lot of that really fit.
Yeah. So your life, you shared it. They know what happened with you. That makes them comfortable to come in and talk to you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I mean that's got to be some pretty powerful stuff.
It is. You hear some things sometimes that, often, sometimes life would be easier if you didn't hear those things, right? Because you got to make some decisions and choices. But you're there to save kids, right? My whole life's goal has been to save kids, right? And hopefully they don't go through what I had to go through to learn, right? I
Yeah.
always say, dumb people make the same mistake over and over again. Average people learn from their mistakes, and smart people learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah.
And so I need my kids to be smarter than I was. Right? They need to learn from my mistakes.
8 state championships, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you like if you think about winning now, like how do you define winning to the kids today? Hey, hey, listen, we're used to winning. Like now, how do you define it?
Well, the winning from me and the winning on my side is the kids and the relationships and the smile, right? When you have 220 kids, the reality is only about 15 of those kids are going to score at the state finals and win a state title. 207 of those kids have nothing to do with us winning a state title in that sense. But as a team, right? As we're all pushing each other, we're all fighting for each other in the same way. Every one of them has something to do with that state
Yeah.
title. And so the expectation around here is winning, right? When the old, the old guard comes back and they do a lot, and they talk about tradition, and they talk about what the expectations are. If you don't meet those expectations, that can be tough. And so when we talk about winning, we really are more process oriented than we are goal oriented.
Yeah.
So, or outcomes oriented, right? We just we want to win every day. We want to win. It's a win that if at 2:40 everybody is in the locker room and we're all ready to go for today's character lesson, and I don't have anybody walking in late. Boy, we already won, but that's winning, right? It's a win that, while we sit there for 15 minutes and we focus on some topic that we all think is important, that we're all focused, we're dialed in. We won that. When we go out to warm up, that's a win, right? We're trying to win the moment and
Yeah.
not win
Mm.
the outcome, because when you win each moment and you win the process, you could lose at the outcome. You could lose your goal, but you did a lot of winning along the way.
Yeah.
A lot of lessons were learned along the way. I'm not interested in losing. I say all the time, when I first became the head coach, somebody had said, losing builds character, and I said, man, I better start teaching character on a regular basis, because I have no plans of losing. We're here to win. I don't want to. I hate to lose. I'm the worst. I tell everybody, you show me a good loser, I'll show you a loser. I am planning to win all the time. But as you get wiser and you get older, you realize you can plan to win, but you better be prepared to lose.
Yeah.
You better.
So
You
how do you
better.
do that? How do you, because it sounds like you don't lose much. So
No,
when
we
you
don't.
do,
We
how
don't.
do you handle as a coach, and how do you work with your athletes on that?
I've gotten a lot better at it. I can tell you this: in 2008. In 2007, we were runner up. In 2008, we thought we were going to win. We ended up falling 1 point short. And the girls team was third. And we were on the same bus together. And I had said, I was a young guy. It's a lot of years ago, right? It's almost 20 years ago. And we had done everything to win. We were going to win. And we ended up
Yeah.
losing by a point. And I got on the bus that day, and everybody was dead silent. Usually our buses, it's fun. We're having a good time, especially when the girls are, because they're loud and they're
Yep.
excited about whatever they're excited about. And they all felt, I could tell, they all felt a certain way about not only the day, but about me, about all the time that I had put into this team, and all the time that and it in that moment, it made it about me. And I remember standing up and turning around and going, guys, do you understand what we did today? We were out of 150 teams in the state of Michigan, our boys were second and our girls were third. We were the best squad that was there combined, and we did so many great things. And I want you to understand how proud I am of you, and how much I appreciate you. But up until that moment, I think in my coaching, I didn't understand how to win when you lose, or how to learn when you lose. I heard a really good quote the other day. Mistakes and losing, that's just data, right? And if you don't use that data, if you discard that, if every time you lose, you go and you pout and you throw a fit, and you don't get anything out of the losing, then you don't have that data for the day.
Yeah.
And we got to be data driven, right? So we got to figure out how to, you know, you're going to fall short. Winning's really freaking hard, right? Everybody wants to do it. Everybody wants to win the job. Everybody wants to close the sale.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to buy the car, right? They're going to buy it from you, or they're going to buy it from the guy down the road. Winning is selling the car, right? You're not going to sell all the cars, right? So that guy's in business too. So winning is really difficult to do. They don't need you when they win. They're going to have all kinds of friends when they win. They need you when they lose. A
Mm.
real coach is there with his kids when you lose. That's really when they need you the most. And I've watched kids. I had a girl, she's a professional pole vaulter. She does an amazing job. She makes the world team. I go all the way out to Eugene, Oregon. She makes the world team. I couldn't get 5 seconds to talk to her. I went all the way out there, and she's busy with this and that and the USA track and field and all of this
Yeah.
stuff. She didn't need me. I could have not gone. I was happy to be there to celebrate, but she didn't need me. A few years later, she doesn't make the Olympics. we're sitting alone in a pizza shop in Eugene, Oregon, because you don't have any friends when you lose, right?
Yeah.
Real mentors and real coaches are there when you're down, right?
Yeah.
That's when you need your people. And so
How did that go when you were with her when she lost?
yeah, it's tough. It's tough. You're right. Like I worked so hard, I put all this time in. But that's the life of an athlete on any level. Here she's complaining about not making the Olympics, right? The next kids were, worried that they didn't make the Olympic trials, right? Then I go back to my high school kids and they're worried about they didn't win the state title. This kid's worried about, yeah, we're all in
Yeah.
the well, I'm worried about, I didn't get a great deal on the next car I'm going to buy,
Yeah.
right? So winning is all relative. It's just what do you say to somebody when they put all their time and effort and expectations into winning,
Yeah.
and they fall short by
Yeah.
sometimes no fault of their own. Track and field is a sport that doesn't have any defense, right? There's nothing I can do, and much like sales, much like a lot of things in this world, right? You
Yeah.
really can't play defense when you're selling, right? You can badmouth the other person, but that strategy is not going to work out most of the
No.
time. You just got to do your job, and so if you can't play defense, other people are going to have better offense sometimes,
Yeah.
and when they do, you got to be prepared to teach them how to deal with that, and
Yeah.
in the and we do that a lot. We never lose. We either win or we learn. And
Yeah.
some years we do a lot more learning than win.
Well, I mean, you kind of answered this already, but you send a lot of kids to college to run track. What do you think truly prepares these young men and women for that next level, that next leap?
We're so proud of not only the kids we send there. This is a difference, right? The goal is not to get to college, right? The goal is to graduate college. The
Hmm.
goal is not to get onto the track team at the University of Michigan. The goal is to contribute for the team at the University of Michigan. So we're so proud of the fact that not only we send a lot of kids, and we send dozens and dozens of kids to great schools all over the country on a regular basis, but we're more proud of the fact that when we go to the Big Ten championships, we have 5 kids competing in the Big Ten championship meet, right? They're not just there as team members; they're competitors, and they're making their team better, right?
Yeah.
And so the number one thing is we teach them is a passion for our sport, right? Our kids get there and they're passionate and they're knowledgeable about their sport beyond what everybody else is because they're not necessarily on a powerhouse team the way ours is. But also we teach them what it takes to win, what it takes to be successful, and ultimately it's attitude and effort, right? If you're there every day, if I'm
Hmm.
hiring somebody and they come into my office and every single day they got a great attitude and they got an infectious effort, we're going to get better. Right,
Yeah.
my office is going to be better. My kids are going to be better. My team's going to be better, and that's all you can control sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Attitude and effort every single day. That's it. That's all you got. Your boss is going to tell you, what's going to happen today, or your coach is going to tell you what's going to happen today, or the weather is going to be, you know, poor outside because we live in, Michigan.
Yeah.
So we give them the skills and the tools to go off and be successful, not just in track and field. I mean, you read the book. There's so many kids in there that are,
Yeah.
it's like the murderer's row. And there's 6, 7 chapters that were cut out because, made the book too long or maybe the chapter wasn't strong enough.
Right.
But they're doing amazing, they're, CEOs and vice presidents and all these things they're out there doing. I'm so proud of our kid professional athletes and, you name it. So,
How
um,
many come back to say hello?
all of them. Yeah.
Good.
The best part about this book was they come back and say hello a lot, right?
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate. They come by, they stop by my office, or they come out to the track. But what this book made me do was every one of those kids, those 21 kids, including my own kids that are in there, I had to make an appointment to discuss with them what was going to be in the book. So, hey, next Wednesday at 5 o'clock, can you give me an hour? yep, coach. Okay, we're gonna do a Zoom meeting, and I'm gonna read through what I think the chapter is. You tell me if it's right or wrong, or I'm just some goofy old man who doesn't remember what happened. And and every one of those hours made me feel like I should do that more. Right. Like I don't. And so even the kids who weren't in the book, I started to reach out to more like, hey, what are you doing? How you, not
Yeah.
just a text, you get a,
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate, on Father's Day, I get a bunch of texts from kids to say, happy Father's Day, which
Yeah.
is, but breaks your heart, and fills your heart. Um, but also, you know, you you connect with these kids at a different level, and you want to fill your heart more, do it as much as
Yeah.
you can.
That's awesome. So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned before that your high school is one of the most diverse high schools out there.
Yeah.
80, 90 different languages,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
languages. Yeah.
how the heck do you create any type of unity on a
Yeah.
team when you have all these different cultures and languages going on?
I can tell you it's amazing. Like you don't the school in itself is amazing. My favorite team to watch. I love my team, and we have kids from every culture. But our soccer team, soccer is track is the same sport in every country. It doesn't, it's a lot of
Yeah,
running, right? Soccer is a different sport in every country. Everybody plays different styles,
play
and I don't
different.
know a
Yep.
lot about soccer, but I spend a lot of time with the soccer coaches because I just admire them. Our soccer team is very competitive. They won 5 state titles themselves. Um, to watch our coaches bring those kids together with all the different styles of play, and we'll start the season, you know 2-3 or 3-7, and then we get some momentum, and we'll close out with a 10-12 game winning streak. This year we were in the Elite Eight in the state, and to watch them all come together. We have Bosnians and Serbians on the same team in the same school, right? And that's not if you knew anything about that war, that's not a great
Yeah.
mix.
No.
Their parents sit in the stands, and they'll sit on one side and the other, but the kids are on the field together. And when they win a state title, they all bring their flags, their own
Yeah.
flags from their countries, and they
Yeah.
run around the field waving all these different flags. It's really amazing. And so when I do it, I make sure it's almost second nature to us, but we make sure people understand, like, this is Muhammad. Muhammad is from Eritrea. That's a different place from where this kid's from. He's from Congo. Well, and then we have this kid over here. He's from Burma. And this kid over
But
here,
how do all these kids end up at Michigan? These all different cultures. Like how they get there?
Yeah. So we had it started, we had a place called Bethany Christian Services where every country, Bosnia was a big one back in early 2000s, late 90s. And this was kind of the first place they came to because Bethany Christian Services brought them in. And our community was perfect for it. It was racially diverse, but also diverse in housing. And
Yeah.
so we would have some low income housing, and we have people who live on a golf course, and we have people who live in low income housing. So not only are we diverse as far as race goes, we're socioeconomically
Economic. Yeah.
diverse.
Mm.
And so um, but then the next group, there would be the Lost Boys of Sudan, so those kids would come in, and then Eritrea would have a conflict, and those kids would come in, and then Kenya, and then once you get a family member here, then they're sending money back. I've had so many kids who are working at McDonald's, but also on the team and making $150 a week, and they're sending 100 back to their families. And like, I'm going to survive on this 50, and I'm going to send 100 back to my families. And I'm married. I'm going to get married to this girl someday. I'm already, but I got to get her over here. I got to get her to America, and this is how I'm going to do it. And so, it will blow your mind sometimes. Kids will tell you stories of how they lived and what
Yeah.
their lives were like over there in a war-torn country where sometimes they were soldiers, sometimes they were, attacked, unbeknownst to them, or they barely escaped. And
Yeah.
so we'll have kids share. I'll say, well, you want to share. You want to share your story next
Yeah.
Tuesday? I got a spot in the character lesson. You could just talk about where you're from, and it it's so often on our team that this kid and this kid, this kid lives on the golf course, this kid's living goes, they become best friends.
Yeah.
And then that parent says, "Hey Dave, how do I get, so and so a pair of shoes? Or what size
Mm,
shoes does Fasika wear? 9.5. Okay, I'm gonna buy a pair for my kid and I'm gonna buy a pair for him." And
that's awesome.
it's incredible the growth that you get from it. My son right now drives home a couple of buddies who they don't have a car, and they're the one kid is an incredible athlete, but his life's a little tough right now. I can promise you, his child's life's going to be a whole hell of a lot better
Oh
because
yeah.
he's going to go to college and he's going to do
Yeah.
some amazing things, because of this silly sport that we get to be a part
Yeah.
of.
I mean, Dave, that's got to be so cool as the head coach. It's almost like the overseer of the whole thing and
Yeah,
watching all these things develop, relationships develop, and they go on and do great things in life. And you can say, hey, I had something to do with that, and be
yeah,
part of it. It's crazy. But, you talk about culture, right? You say culture beats strategy when pressure hits.
yeah, yeah.
Right? Like what are your non-negotiables when it comes to like culture in the locker room and on the team?
So I know you read it, but in the back of the book, there's all these team rules. There's 126 team rules, and essentially it comes down to, you gotta probably act a little bit more mature than you are. You got to show a lot of respect toward not only yourself but your teammates and the staff members that are there. Um, I don't mind mistakes. Mistakes are going to happen. If you're in a locker room with 200 teenage boys, you're going to have a lot of mistakes being made on a regular
Yeah.
basis.
Oh yeah.
I'm not super tolerant of mistakes that occur more than once. The same mistake that occurs, and we have kids who can find different mistakes every day of the week. But we always go, well, eventually you're going to run out of mistakes, kid. We're
Yeah.
gonna we're gonna stick with you until you just wash these out. And so you know, it really what it comes down to is where's your heart at? What are
Mm.
you mean spirited? Have you, like if you're doing things in a kind way and you're goofy and you're silly and you show up to practice late, I can have a conversation with you about that. Um, are you mean to your teammates? Are you respectful of the people around you? Those are the things that when we grow our culture, we have had we've had a lot of fast kids, obviously. We have had kids all over the country, a lot of kids, who've run fast, thrown far. We had a guy in the Super Bowl last week who won the Super Bowl. That's pretty awesome. Um, but when it comes down to is do you have a really kind heart and are you willing to grow and mature and
Mm.
change? And so I always say, you grow up, everybody grows up between 14 and 40. Some of us a little closer to 40, some of us a little closer to 14. The closer to 14 that you grow up, the better your life's going to be, right? And the closer to 40, probably the worse your life's going to be. We're
Yeah.
going to drive you to I want sophomores that act like juniors that act
Yeah.
like seniors, and seniors that act like freshmen in college. And
Yeah.
and and we're gonna pound that home every single day.
That's awesome. So your book, what inspired it? Like what and then
Yeah.
like what are you hoping people take away from reading it?
So in 2024, my youngest son uh, is on the team. We're at state final. So 20 hits, we get wiped out. 21, we're okay team. 22, we're not very good. 23, we're average at best. We had won the regional, so people still thought we were an okay team. In 2024, we were third in the conference. We have 6 teams in our conference. We were third in the regional. It was the first regional we had lost in 18 years. And we went to the state finals and we scored 10 points at the state finals, which isn't really a bad day. But the reality was the 10 points all came from my 10th grade son who won the pole vault, and which was the first 10th grader in 75 years to win the pole vault in the state of
Yeah.
Michigan. And I should have been an overjoyed dad and gone home and kissed my wife and thrown a party and been excited. But the reality was I was depressed. I was a mess. My run, this amazing run that I've made as a coach, is come to an end. Right, my career is going to be over in a couple of years. I'm not a very good coach anymore, or whatever. None of it was probably true, but all of it felt true at the moment.
Yeah.
And I would, and so my thought was, I need to capture the glory days, and I just need to write those stories down, and just so I can kind of feel good about myself again. I want to talk about 2001 or 2010 or 2011, whatever. So I would get up every morning that summer around 4 or 5 o'clock, and I would write, and I'd write for 5 hours until everybody
Wow.
in the house started to stir, and then I'd close the laptop and move on with my day. And by the end of the summer, um, I thought, I kind of have something there, and I also started to think, why don't I do that thing anymore? I haven't done that thing since COVID. We haven't read the team laws since COVID, or are we really holding kids accountable the way we used to? We really started to become more talented oriented, outcome oriented. It's really slipped back into like transactional coaching. And Nick Saban came out and talked about when he became a transformational coach. And I watched that on a show, and I was like, that's it. That's the word. It's transformational coaching. And we weren't really doing it, right? When kids would lose, we'd be way too hard on them. When kids would win, we'd pat them on the back. Um, and we weren't process oriented. And so I get done with that summer. I think I got a book. I reach out to John Gordon, the energy boss, and I get an email back right away that basically says, John's way too busy for this, you know, that you're not getting to John. Is what it was. And about 2 hours later, John himself emails me and he says, hey, I think his secretary's name might be Marcy. Marcy, Dave might have something here. Let's hook him up with Alex Demchek at Streamline Publishing. And and he said, one comment he said was, it looks like you got a good start to a book. And I was like, no, I think it's done. I think the book's all done. I Did you not get all the pages? And he was right. It was just the start to a book. A lot has changed since that first
Yeah.
manuscript was finished. But really, that's what motivated me to do it. And then in 2025, the book is kind of going, and we start to implement some of our old strategies with kids, and we're a pretty dang good team. We come out and we win the conference, win the regional. We're eighth at the state meet. We had a lot of young kids, and we're on the verge of probably another big year ahead of us. And so, my thought to coaches is just, this is a tool. And if you use this tool, and not just coaches, really parents, there's a lot of
Anybody.
parenting in it,
Anybody. Yeah.
leadership.
Yep.
You've read it. It touches on a lot of that, but really, when I put it out there, I wasn't sure how it was going to be taken by people. I just thought I was proud of it. And I've heard back from so many people and so many coaches. And the number one, the picture that makes me laugh the most is the coach that takes a picture of it and it's all pig-eared, and it's highlighted throughout. Like, I'm using this and I'm using this and I'm
Yeah.
using this. And
That's the best. That's how you know
ah,
you made an impact with that book.
it's the best, the
Yeah.
best. I'm just so proud of those moments, right?
Yeah.
That people are using it, because
Yeah.
I really love right now. I'm into coaching coaches. As an athletic director, I spend a lot of time sitting with all my coaching staff members and helping them, move their teams forward. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So how can they get the book? And if they want, like you said, you're doing keynotes, you're flying all over the country doing stuff. Somebody wants to get a hold of you. How do they do that?
The book is on Amazon. It's probably the easiest way. Beyond the Finish Line, The Art of Transformational Coaching. Look up my name. And then, I own davidemeott.com, which is, so shockingly, nobody wanted that. So that's my website. You can get out and find me there. I'm all over all the various social medias. I'm on all of those. I'm just starting to get on TikTok. That's the last one I've ventured into.
All
But
right.
I'm on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and LinkedIn. And really, what I've done is I've made a conscious effort of, okay, if you're gonna promote this book and you think it's good for people, you want to get it out there. Um, then you gotta put yourself where people are, and where people are right these days are on social media. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm out there.
How do you feel about social media being we're not really that part of that generation? You know what I mean?
It's tough, man.
Yeah.
I, uh, I tried to do Instagram, and really, like I said, I have these kids, that are of that age, and so I was like, all right, teach the old man how to do. I had not. People noticed, when I started posting, they're like, "Oh, you're just posting because of this book." I'm like, "Yeah, of course,"
Yeah. Why
but
not?
I'm trying to give my feedback on things that really pertain to the book, and so, but I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. Like I was so. Uh, it was so diff I made 10 videos on Instagram and they were all too long to fit on the format.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
made them all and canned them and did all this stuff and went to post one and it didn't work. And so I had to go back and remake them all. But I think when things come out, right? Like I'm sure when the book came out or the calculator came out or now it's AI and social media and all of these things. We're just going to be better for these things. It's just
Yeah.
difficult on us, right?
Yeah.
We're the old guys who aren't used to it. And so it's going to make our world better because the people are going to find the way to make our world better
Oh yeah.
using, so
Everything improves everything.
yeah,
And it's funny what you said about your old rules. What's old is new. And look at the impact it's making. So
absolutely.
Dave, yeah, how many years you got left of coaching?
I'm probably going to coach till I die. I'm going to sit next to a pole vault pit or
Okay.
as long as I can.
Okay.
But how many years I have left as a head coach on a high school track team is probably a better question. I want to be around kids forever. I love it. I really enjoy it. But my run as an athletic director is coming to an end at the end of this year. At the end of this calendar year, December, it's going to be Dunzos for me when it comes to being an athletic director. I'm going to be a head coach probably this year and probably another year because I'm already into the year, so I might as well finish it up. Um, but I love being around kids.
Yeah.
I love changing lives and making
Yeah.
them better and helping them, with all the little silly things that they're stressing about in their lives. That to me is what fills my cup.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, head coaching might be coming to an end. Who knows though? I don't know what retirement looks like. I haven't seen it yet. So I spent my whole life having a 5-year plan, and I can honestly tell you right now, I don't have one. I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. At the end of next school year, that retirement party is going to be gigantic.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
it's gonna be. Hey,
it's going to
people
be
are
big.
already asking,
Yeah.
when can we when's it gonna be and what's the date and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not in charge of that. My amazing wife is in charge of all
Or
that.
maybe the town will take over that one,
Yeah, who
or the
knows? Who knows?
school.
Yeah, it's been an amazing run, man.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of all the kids, and that's really what it comes down to is all the, when you get the pictures from the kid and they just had a baby, and you get
Yeah.
that picture, and that baby is 25 minutes old, and you're getting a picture in the
Yeah.
hospital, and you're like, wow, this kid who was going down a path that was not going to end well has now went to college, graduated college, got married, has become a CFO of a company and has a baby and
And thought of
and
you.
and thought of me in that
Yeah.
moment, right?
Right.
It
Right.
was thought of some high school coach that he had 10 years ago in that moment.
Yeah.
That to me is the
Priceless.
price.
Yeah.
You can't put a number on it, that's
Right.
for sure.
Well, here's a question for you. There's going to come a day when Dave's not around anymore,
Yeah.
right? We all have that issue. So
Yeah.
far, we can't get out of we still can't get out of life alive, right? So your name's going to come up, and when it does, how do you want people to remember you?
Yeah, I hope people remember me as a guy who was caring and loving and had integrity with with everything he did, right? Um, there's no legacy in this world. I say all the time in high school athletics, I think there are sometimes in other places, but it's so cyclical in high school. It's 4 years, and you'll leave. Guys will retire. I'll watch legends retire, and they come back a year later, and the kids will go, "Oh, who's the old guy?" Right? Like, there'll be no legacy for me here. outside of the relationships that I've built with those kids, right?
Right.
And I hope somewhere when I leave, right, that people get to sit around and tell stories of me, right? And how I helped them and how I helped them to develop. And that's to me, that's I used to have these parties at my house, New Year's Eve luncheon, and this was all pre-COVID stuff. Again, another thing that we probably stopped having because of COVID, but with New Year's Eve luncheon, and it would be at 12 o'clock, sandwiches at Coach Emmeott's house, and all the alumni could come back and just hang out at my house, and I would be like a Cheshire cat, smiling ear to ear, watching them in the corner tell stories,
Yeah.
oh, this would happen and that would, and not about me, but about the team
Yeah.
and our time spent
Experience.
together and
Yeah.
traveling and the experience. And really, to me, that's what fills my heart.
Yeah.
That stuff is the relationships that you build. And then, they bring their kid over and they go, I want you to meet my coach.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a big deal, you know.
It gets you a little emotional, doesn't
You know, you got me all torn up here.
it? So, so Dave, we talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about your teenage years. We talked about out of that. We talked about the beginning of your coaching. We talked about your championships. We talked about your book. We talked about how you want to be remembered. Is there anything we haven't hit on you think we should touch before we wrap it up?
Oh, just that I would say to everybody, take your opportunity to change lives wherever you can, right? Take your opportunity. It doesn't matter if you're a manager of a sales team, it doesn't matter, give one chance too many, not one chance too few in this life. You never know what's coming next. And if you get an opportunity to change somebody's life today, tomorrow, forever, do it in a positive way. Do it in a way that lifts you up, because
Yeah.
ultimately your own success is just on you. But when you can have success as a team or as a group of individuals, there's no better feeling.
Yeah. Well, Dave, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, buddy.
Your stories is awesome. I hope everybody goes out and buys the book, reaches out to you to be a keynote, and if there's anything I can ever do to help you, you got my number, let me know. And I'm looking forward to seeing championship #9.
Me too, man. I'm hoping for these kids that they get to experience that day. I mean,
Yeah,
I've experienced it a bunch. This is a special group of kids I got right now, and they're all special, but this is a group that I want to see really get to experience that for sure. They deserve it. They've been working hard. So
it's right at their fingertips.
that's right.
All right,
Hey,
Dave, stay
thanks, man.
strong.
Hey, anything you ever need from me, you let me know. I'm there for you, okay?
You got it. Stay strong.
Thanks, man. You too.